The Hills Have Eyes 2. No, not that one. That's The Hills Have Eyes Part 2, and has one of the greatest things ever filmed where a dog, an actual real-life dog, has a flashback and it's just, chef's kiss. Well, I actually think the original 1985 sequel is way too much fun for its own good. It was written and directed by Craven, brings back Michael Berryman, has Harry Manfredini give us the score, and oh yeah, has a dog flashback. A dog flashback. But I'm not here to talk about that one. That one is probably so bad it's good. I'm here to discuss the true black sheep of this inbred mountain family of a film series and give you all a look at the movie that is not a remake of the sequel, but rather a sequel to the remake. The Hills Have Eyes 2 is a slept-on piece of mid-2000s horror that should be viewed with the others instead of living in its outcasted cave where it currently resides. Last month, or, whenever this video airs comparatively to that, Lance took a look at the Alexandre Aja directed remake of The Hills Have Eyes from 2006. That is a nasty piece of work that is uncompromising, mean, and at times a very uncomfortable watch. It is by far and away the best remake of Craven's films, and is a feather in the cap of the director who has a ton of great watches under his belt. And it got me thinking about this long lost to time sequel that I remember watching on video and going, meh, but it did pretty decently in theaters, making almost $38 million on its $15 million budget. It brought back Cravens, both Wes and son Jonathan, to write it, and kind of relates to that original sequel that is now almost 40 years old. In that original sequel, Ruby, who is a survivor of the first film and turncoat mutant, ends up back in the desert to face off against more hills that have more eyes. That's a dumb joke, but if IMDb is to be believed, and who are we to question it, the original title of today's movie was supposed to be The Hills Have Eyes 2, The Hills Still Have Eyes. That is almost as stupendously dumb as the dog flashback. What was part 3 supposed to be? 3 Eyes, 3 Hills with a Z? I'd accept it. Anyway, the movie originally involved a survivor of Aja's movie, the character Brenda being so messed up from her ordeal that she joins the National Guard to sort out her problems. That actress, Emily DeRavin, was actually in for it, but was on mega hit Confusion Fest Lost on TV and couldn't fit it into her schedule. Craven kept the bones of the story and just had a National Guard team go into the titular hills on a mission. Our director here is Martin Weiss, who was chosen after original director M.J. Bassett was unavailable. If you haven't seen Bassett's 2002 movie Death Watch, go give it a look. Weiss is primarily a music video director with only 2 other films to his name, including one that is a grim watch in, Grim Love starring Kerry Russell. The other writer besides Wes, Jonathan, the other Craven meat, is along the same lines as that director with only some music videos that he helmed, even if he did write a few episodes of the Freddy TV show and the way too stupid to be bad Mind Ripper. The acting here is chock full of solid that guy actors, so we'll just focus on the 3 main characters. Missy is played by Daniela Alonso, and in addition to headlining Wrong Turn 2 the same year as this, she's also been in The Collector for us horror fans. Apart from the genre we love, she also has done a ton of TV, including 64 episodes of Dynasty. Jessica Strout plays Amber, who is a stand-in character for what would have been the returning actor and character from the previous film. On the horror side, she would show up in both the remakes of Prom Night on the big screen and True Blood on the small screen. Finally, we have Michael McMillan as unlikely hero Napoleon. McMillan has this as his only horror movie, but was a major character also on True Blood, and has done a lot of other TV as well. So, why do I like this movie? Well, it does feel like it was written by a teenager, as all of the National Guard soldiers have sweet nicknames like Stump, Crank, Barbie, and Sarge.
I'm in fucking awe.
And there's plenty of colorful language and bloody violence.
Oh, legs asleep, dick's asleep. You wanna wake it up? Nah, that's your daddy's job.
And as we know, colorful language and bloody violence are 2 of our main food groups in the pyramid here at JoBlo, so that lends itself wonderfully to us. The movie opens with a fun piece of trickery, as Sector 16 is the former nuclear testing area that we saw in the first movie. We see a few scientists and a military commander get absolutely jobbed, but it does a few things right. There's plenty of gore, but we don't really see what is attacking the poor dudes. In fact, whether for budgetary reasons or a conscious choice to maintain the mutant mystery, we don't see the radiated cannibal family for much of the runtime. Some things here and there, sure, but a lot of quick cuts and near misses. When you do get to see them, it's much more impactful than it could have been. Speaking of the mutant baddies, there's a logical progression and more than just a copy-paste job that they could have gone for. While there is a giant leader who has more hit points than most final bosses in video games, and the harmless one trying to help the heroes,
you're safe here. Safe.
There's also a few other cool ones. The one who dresses up in military garb, the chameleon one who can blend into the walls and ground due to his own specific mutation, and one just called Stabber who, well, you get it. The gore and gross factor go all in too. From the rather disgusting birth scene in the beginning and its thematically relevant sexual assault of Missy near the end of the movie, to bayonets going into eyes and a scientist crawling out of a porta potty to attempt to warn them only to die what I assume is from disgust. Or like sepsis, I don't know. Can you imagine though? He's all cut up and definitely got that stuff in his raccoon wounds. The movie's plot, on the other hand, is rather predictable and boilerplate, unfortunately. After we see the scientist and lead military guy bite it in the beginning, we're introduced to our ragtag group who fails their training mission that is presented to us as a real-life operation.
A stunning display of individual and group stupidity.
Of course, their commanding officer riles them up and tells them how ill-prepared they are, and of course that same leader is gunned down by friendly fire by one of the troopers who then feels guilty about it until he too dies. They proceed to get picked off, mostly one at a time, and lose most of their ammo and supplies in the process, while also having no way out. One of the soldiers who is seen as the weakest and least prepared becomes the hero they didn't know they had amongst their ranks. This description could be a ton of different movies and has been done to death.
Bobby?
Yeah.
Leave Doug alone. He's a Democrat. He doesn't believe in guns.
But are you really watching The Hills Have Eyes 2 for its stellar storytelling ability? As this team gets dwindled down and picked off, oddly enough with 2 of them being shot to death and 2 of them dying from falling, probably due to the budget, they enter a cave system that the original soldier told them about before he takes himself off the board for good. The caves are dark, again helping with the look of some of the stuff on screen, but also look pretty good and were designed by the same team that did the caves for one of my all-time favorites, The Descent. They slide down some tube tunnels and use up all their ammo while thankfully taking out a couple of the threats. Missy is kidnapped, and it's pretty clear that her, Amber, and Napoleon are going to be the final 3. That's exactly what happens after some gnarly fights and an ill-timed explosion. The final confrontation is a fun one, with all 3 of the remaining soldiers seeking revenge for either themselves in Missy's case, or for their fallen comrades in the case of Napoleon and Amber. Papa Hades is no pushover though, and he's able to toss them around like a parent playing with their toddlers. He can also take quite the amount of damage due to his being a mutant and all. They're able to stab him with a pole that feels reminiscent of the American flag kill from the first movie, but even that doesn't put him down for good. The bayonet sure does the trick, however. As most horror movies, and nearly all sequels, end though, our heroes make it out of the caves only to be spotted on repurposed military equipment used by mutants in another area of the desert. There would be no part 3, however, and that's a shame. While this movie probably isn't going to show up on anyone's favorite films of all time list, it could have continued the series on the direct-to-video market. Series like Hellraiser and Wrong Turn absolutely thrived in that arena, and these films could have churned out low-budget but consistently fun entries every couple years. The Hills Have Eyes 2 doesn't belong where its critical score shelves it, nor where the fans discuss it. It has a lot of fun with the premise and makes good on what you'd expect to see. A good black sheep is one that defies its odds and labels to be something that makes you say, well, actually, when someone asks for a horror recommendation, particularly within an established series of films. Seek this one out any way you can and bask in the glory that is a schlocky sequel to one of our finest remakes.